All right, so our final and not least awesome speaker. I don't know. Equally awesome speaker.
Equally awesome. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing.
Brandon,
You're allowed to speed it, Otis.
Yes.
gonna give us a talk about ChatOps.
Yes. And so I'll preface this saying I am not an expert in ChatOps at all. I've been doing it for maybe about 8 months. The real person who you should, if you want to know a lot of stuff about this, you follow Jason Hand from VictorOps. He has a lot of awesome talks on this subject, and I have stolen a lot of these concepts right from his slides. So there's that. So who am I? I'm Brandon Olin. I'm a lead systems engineer at Columbia Sportswear. I've been at Columbia for 9 years or so now. Before that, I was at an insurance company in Portland. And before that, I was in the Marine Corps doing IT stuff, but in the forest or the desert, you know, in the rain. But same stuff, fixing desktops, building networks, running Cat5, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, and usually not indoors. And that's where you can find me on GitHub and on my blog, which I currently need to update more. So I tried to find my first PowerShell script, and this is what I came up with. No idea if this is accurate or not. But I found this thing from 2008, and I can't even remember if I copied this from a website or if I actually wrote this myself because I didn't comment it. And you notice this right here, the .msh.
Yeah, so copy that
Yeah.
from
And obviously I was doing something with networks, with Nix at the time. So what I'm going to talk about is ChatOps. And at the, I'm not going to read this, but the basic concept of ChatOps is putting the tools in the same place as you're having conversations with your team or other teams. So as you are having conversations with people, you are running tools to fix problems or to look at things in the same context as the conversation. So nothing is lost. I'm not on the phone and then I go away for 2 hours and I come back and say, yep, problem's fixed. And I was like, well, what'd you do? You did something in the vacuum, and all that knowledge is gone. So ChatOps is really trying to get everything into one spot, so you have a kind of coherent flow of what's happening. And this is just kind of another way to say that here. Putting new tools in line with the conversations. So how do you do that? Is usually with some type of chat tool. Here's a couple: Slack, HipChat, Teams, IRC, not Skype. You can use Skype, I guess. I hate Skype. And there's many more probably. What do you do to implement ChatOps? Is you usually have some type of bot framework listening in these chat networks, and here's just a couple. You have Qbot, you have Airbot, Cog, Lida. These are all different types of bot frameworks written in the language that they want. So usually there's a bot framework for every language out there, and I'm about to show you another one. So I mean, a lot of these kind of they operate similarly. So it's like whatever language you're comfortable with, there's a bot kind of tailored for that language. And so what are the social benefits of ChatOps? Knowledge sharing is one big one. Especially with, one of the problems with kind of being in IT is you kind of get siloed into doing one thing, and you become the person who knows everything about that one subject and no one else does, and you are now the Brett, So ChatOps is really about surfacing all the work that is being done into a conversation so other people can do it as well. Another enables team empowerment, where you can get some interesting behaviors when you become the person who can do the thing and no one else can, and you get this little resentment from other team members, like, oh, I want to do that, but I can't do that because you're the lucky one that gets to play with that thing. So ChatOps is another way to share these tools with other people and enable them to do the fun stuff as well. Enable them to run the commands. At least where I work, we're tier 3 engineering organization. We have access to do everything because we are the ones who implemented it, but that doesn't mean that that's just by default. But we don't, I mean, sometimes it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to give access to other people to do these things, but we don't do it, and we end up having to solve everyone's problems when we really should be giving that access to other groups to be able to do that. ChatOps is a great way to make that easy. It also enables situational awareness. Really putting all these conversations and tools and monitoring and alerts in one space, make sure everyone on the team knows what's going on. So you're not having hallway conversations, especially with remote teams. Putting everything in a chat tool is really beneficial. Steve could probably answer that more than I do because my organization isn't remote. But having everything in one tool so everyone can know what's going on, they can see a problem's going on, they can see people running commands and discussing how to fix it. It's all in a single flow, and nothing's being lost. Another benefit, social benefit anyway, is faster onboarding. We do this a lot at Columbia, where you get a brand new person on the team and they can just jump into the channels for that team, and they can just see what's been going on the past couple of days. They can just kind of back scroll up and see what kind of stuff is happening, and they can get a basic feel of the day-to-day life of that team. They can say, they're having this conversation, they're running these commands, and it gives them a little bit of a helping hand on how to get started in that team. It's not the only thing, but it does help them get a little bit of context and history. This is another great benefit, is retrospectives. And we're just having this last week that I've been halfway paying attention to while I've been here. A little incident going on. And it's all been in Slack. So there's like hundreds and hundreds of messages that I haven't read, but it's all in there. You have an incident or problem, something's down. Everyone jumps into, ideally, some type of temporary channel to discuss it, run tools to fix problems. You have a flight recorder type log of everything that happened to work that incident. And then since you have that all documented, and it's not in 1,000 email threads that you may or may not have been a part of, because you get dropped in and out of threads and on email all the time, and phone calls that you're not part of. You have a complete history of the incident, and you can go back in a retrospective and figure out what worked, what didn't work, how to improve it for the next time it happens. Having that log of everything is a really great thing to at least start from, and you're not having to guess at what happened and make a bunch of assumptions. So technical benefits. Obviously, automation. You're running bot commands. Those are running scripts to do the things. You're not manually logging into servers running these commands. So yeah, automation. Reduced time to recovery. Since you have a bunch of commands at your disposal to fix things, it's really easy. You get an alert, you got a command to go fix it right there. You don't have to log into the server, figure it out, or look it up in your documentation on how to fix this particular problem. You have all these commands right at your disposal in chat, and I can query other people who may be an expert in that technology. They can say, oh, you need to run this command. Get that very simple or very quick conversation back and forth versus calling someone up or running over to the other building to find that person who knows how to fix that problem. If everyone's in the chat talking with each other, it makes it very quick, or can enable a very quick recovery of problems. Another big benefit is if you do funnel all your operations into this way of working, you can enable much better history and logging of what's going on. So every command that I'm running is logged. You want to log everything that these commands do. and it's cheap to do so. Because you're putting a pretty heavy reliance on these tools, you want to make sure you have a very good understanding of who is executing it, what was the context in which they executed that, what was the result of that execution, and so forth. And your security guys will probably want that. Safety. Since you're running all these bot commands, you have a good, and you're not manually logged into servers and logging into or opening up Service Manager and running, restarting a service and all that kind of stuff. You're running bot commands that are essentially running scripts on the back end. You can put some excellent guardrails on what these scripts do. You know exactly what their inputs are and what their outputs are going to be. So you can write them in such a way that they can't do anything that you didn't intend them to do. And that protects you, obviously, and it also helps with giving these commands to other organizations or teams that may not be as technical. You can give them a tool to say, hey, when this happens, run this. We know exactly what it's going to do, and it's impossible for you to screw it up or mess it up. Here's the old and busted way of a lot of these, how these incidents would go. And this is kind of basically how it would be if you were in a chat tool, but kind of substitute a service ticket or a emails back and forth. I'm not going to read this, but basically a user has a problem. Sally, the administrator, gets it, but doesn't know how to fix the problem, has to go find someone else to fix it. 2 hours later, magically it starts working. And no one knew how that happened. No. Bob, or Brent, I should have called him Brent, I guess, fixed it. He's a hero. But no one learned how that was solved. No one got, there was a big missed opportunity here of some knowledge sharing, and so everyone can the resolution of this can be transparent, and that makes us sad. The new way, or at least a better way, is if you had a bot that was in this conversation with you, you can have this bot help you with the resolution, and you can have the complete history of what the problem was, who reported it. Someone picks it up and says, yep, I got this, I'll work with you on this. Hey, you run a command, say, yep, this definitely is a problem. Run another command to fix the problem. Talk to the user, say, does it work now? Yes, it is. Everyone's happy. And, this could take, 10 seconds to do this kind of conversation. And, that's excellent. That's real nice. That's real nice. So what can bots do? Anything you want at the end of the day, but here's just some examples of things you could write up, have a bot do for you. Restart services, get service as ticket status, resolve them, set them, query APIs, create VMs, but I'll preface like modifying infrastructure can kind of start bleeding into configuration management and its role. And there's some caveats with what you would want bots to do versus what you want configuration management to do. Check status of processes, get performance stats, get logs, deploy code, whatever you want it to do. At the end of the day, these are running scripts, so whatever your script can do, your bot can do. And here's some real world examples of at Columbia. This is our bot. His name is Ryu. He's a Hubot. He's written in Hubot, and he's undisputed. I don't want, Here's just some example of me running some bot commands, and you can see I'm pulling, a graph from Grafana for a system. I'm querying some alert status from Sensu. I'm telling Sensu to shut up, or I'm about to do something on that server, so hold my beer. Query DHCP statistics for our Hong Kong data center. Really whatever you want it to do. Some of these you could, like getting a graph, you can probably let anyone do that. That's not really sensitive stuff. Maybe you only want certain people to put a system in maintenance mode, or Sensu, they call it silence. So there is an element of security you kind of want to think about when you write these commands.
Especially for these examples, in the past I've thought about, does it make sense to have a bot that's just mine? It's not using a collaborative sense, trying to make my life more simple. Does that make sense? Is that something you've tried?
We have not done that. It could, I don't know if that would be something that would be a little bit of an anti-pattern where you're not sharing what you're doing with the rest of the team.
Especially when you work in isolation a lot of times, especially on dev projects or for fun projects. We've all got a million scripts somewhere that we can run to make things easier. And I thought, what if I just moved all this stuff into a bot that makes sense? I don't know if it's worth the effort.
It's definitely worth the effort if you want to share that with the rest of the team.
Two questions. One, so you're using QBot. Is that the PowerShell one that is that like Matt Hodge was working on sort of too, or is this the
I think we used his DAC resource to install QBot because it does run on a Windows box.
And then the only other part is, are you able to manage like granular permissions in terms of who within Slack, for instance, can run those? Or is it everyone within?
You can do some type of role permission in QBot, and I'll get into what I wrote, which is a little bit more granular with that.
And can we get your Grafana thing anywhere?
There is a QBot plugin already for Grafana out there. The problem with it, and so I wrote my own, and I used Orange PS Slack to actually send the image back to Slack, is that it needed to write those images out to a public endpoint. So it was writing them all out to S3 buckets. And I didn't want those, and they have to be public because Slack needs to go and get them. And I didn't want to put all my images out there on a public bucket.
So do people know what they can or what they not run, or who can run what?
Yes. There is some commands you can run to say, what can I do? What roles do I have? And you can look at, there's some commands to say, give me all the roles. And then you can say, well, what roles do I have? That means that I can run these set of commands. And then we have commands to grant people access to roles as well. And that's something that we often have, is that someone will create a script, they'll kind of attach a certain role to it, someone else tries to run it, it says, no, you can't do that. Someone else is in the channel watching, it's like, yeah, you can run that, so we'll grant you the role. That happens all the time.
Sorry, I keep having questions. It's really cool. Probably my biggest thing would be where I'm at, we're using Slack as well, but I think security would probably kill us if we had, because Slack is obviously hosted publicly. Do you have any way of basically comforting the security team that I don't even know what my question really is, but basically, never mind. I don't know what the answer to that is.
You're probably putting a text representation of the same type of information. You know, you're when you're relaying information to your teammates and stuff. So it's kind of the same.
We just had this conversation at work too, and what it came back with. So we went to security before we started adding implementations and plugins. We were like, hey, here's the thing that we want to put in there. Like, the primary use case for us was talking around outages. So they needed to be able to talk about CIs. And security guys like, oh, so you're going to be sharing CI names in Slack? And I was like, trying to think of a way that you could talk about an outage without ever mentioning a CI name. I was like, yep, that's a requirement. We have to be able to do that. He's like, I don't care as long as you get a risk acceptance and you understand, like, bad guys get in, they have that pattern. So I would start from like, what is the risk, and then how you can kind of mitigate it, and whether or not you even care, right? So the thing for us was, as long as we can verify that everybody is using their company account for Slack, as long as we can verify that they're an active, enabled member of our team, okay.
Yeah.
If they compromise that, then there's nothing we can really do about it.
Yeah, there is the ability, at least with QBot, I think, to only allow it to run these things in certain channels, and only in Slack you can if you pay for Slack anyway, you can have it where only certain people can be joined to a channel as well. And we pay for Slack, so we have it SAML integration with Okta in our case. So you have to authenticate with this with your AD account. But yeah, definitely don't just do this without security knowing about it. They may not like that. Or, give them donuts. Give them donuts. Have donuts ready when they come to your desk. Say, yeah, sorry.
You look upset.
Yeah. Whoa. So PowerShell.
That did not work.
What about PowerShell? In our case, QBot, it's a JavaScript-based thing. Running running PowerShell from JavaScript works, kind of, sort of, ish. Yeah. Translating between languages is kind of funky. So what I wanted to do was come up with a native PowerShell bot implementation, end to end. Everything is PowerShell, and so I did that. Knowing some of the issues we had with QBot and some of the cool stuff you can do in some other bots like Cog, which is a little bit more security focused, and concept of plugins, I think that Lida and Airbot have with modules in Ruby and Python. So I created PoshBot, and if anyone wants to create a graphic better than that, be my guest. I just took a Creative Commons image and I maxed out my abilities in Paint.net by creating a slightly curved text thing. That blew my mind.
Paint 3D. So.
Oh, yeah. Hey, I just wanted to get 2 layers and a curved text. That's all I want. So PoshBot is it's nearly 100% class-based, PowerShell class-based, so it needs PowerShell 5. And I did that because I never wrote with PowerShell classes before, and I wanted an excuse to do it. So I wanted it. It worked finally. It took a little bit because I was probably using them incorrectly. But it does, enable it to be extensible and some cool things to happen. So what it does is similar to Airbot and Lida, where you have plugins. So I call them plugins in PoshBot, but they are really just PowerShell modules. That's how you get commands into the bot, is by essentially loading a PowerShell module. It does have a simple notion of role-based access control. It does work on commands and events and regex triggers, and that means you can actually run type a string with a bang command name. I want to run that command, but there are events and other things that can happen in chat networks that you can respond to as well. And it should work on multiple chat networks, but I only wrote a Slack backend for it because that's what I use. But it is PowerShell classes. I created a base backend class. I extended it with a Slack backend. Someone else can go and create, a team Slack backend or Teams backend. Should work. This is a very basic PowerPoint diagram of basically the class structure in PoshBot. You have your main bot class. You have a generic backend class, and you implement it with a specific implementation like Slack. There is a plugin manager class where you load your plugins or PowerShell modules, and it's tracking what plugins you have loaded, what their status is, what commands they have in them. You have storage, which is everything that every plugin you have loaded, everything's getting written down to the file system and essentially hash tables. So when you restart the bot, it knows about everything that was loaded before, and it will reload all that stuff. You have a executor, which is responsible for actually executing those commands. And what PoshBot does is it just runs those as a PowerShell job on the local machine, but the potential is you can have it run on a remote machine. The role manager is responsible for authorizing those commands to be run based on the permissions and groups and roles, which I can show you if you want, that you can assign to these commands. So these are just examples of useful plugins that you could create. They don't exist now, but they would be relatively simple to do. ServiceNow, you can create a ServiceNow plugin to create or get tickets, resolve tickets. vSphere, you can create new VMs or AWS or Azure or whatever, because you're really just hitting an API to go do something. Snapshot VMs or get information from a CMDB, get alerts from your monitoring tool, or run smoke tests or execute checks, or really whatever you want. You can create a plugin and a command to do, and then you can assign permissions to those as appropriate to give those out to other people. So a lot of these things, like probably get tickets, you may not even have permissions on that. It's like, I don't care, anyone can run that. You definitely would probably want permissions on new VM, you know, things like that. Or maybe not, you know, YOLO. No. Yeah, so demo. Oh, did you go to sleep? Okay, good. Now I'm gonna sit down the drive. All right, so how many of you saw the lightning demo yesterday? So most, yeah, so you're gonna see it again. Sorry. All right, so I have the bot already running, I believe. No, I don't. Start them up. I'm building the PowerShell, the module right now. If anyone has questions, you can pipe up at any point.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Does the bot support confirmations? Like what Ron said, remove a VM and then ask a question if you really want to do it?
No, because that the two-way integration, at least with Slack, I think Slack needs to be able to reach into and talk to the bot. And if this is running on-prem, it's not going to be able to do that. So you need to have this bot, you know, basically running on the public internet to be able to do that kind of thing.
There's a secondary requirement. You also have to publish to get like the like do it, do not do it. You have to publish it in Slack.
Yeah,
So
as an app.
Slack apps.
Mm.
So, but you could restrict it so that you could only have inbound web traffic from Slack. So you reduce the effect.
Yeah, that's not something I've looked at before, is to get that working. Really, I mean, I created a POC of this in about a week in December while I was on paternity leave, and then I've just been slowly extending it and got it more or less working in this state, I think in January or February, and then just slowly extending it.
They execute those jobs, right?
They do.
So the way around it right now might be if you had like your remove VM and then it had like a 5 or 10 second delay, and it's like, if you want to cancel this, you cancel, remove, and, cancel, and it'll prevent that job from going. Something like that.
I mean, you could probably author it to where you can run a command to say delete VM. The actual command creates a little marker, file, and then it sends a message back saying someone else has to approve this, or someone else respond to this before I do this, and someone else has to say yep, and then you got this like 2 people have to turn the keys type scenario. You could probably architect that, but that would definitely be, your plugin would have to be responsible for implementing that logic.
If you want to go super crazy, you can use natural language processing because you will have the full text conversation, but that's like
yeah. Yeah.
We integrated with ServiceNow so that your ticket create an environment with VM with your command, you put the ticket, create the VM command with status ticket ID or whatever, and it runs and sends the logs to that ticket and updates them. Or they have to put them.
That's really up to you. I mean, the bot doesn't. It just executes. At the end of the day, the bot is executing a function of a module. Whatever that function is doing is kind of up to you. Yeah, so I mean, the commands, the plugins that I've created, most of them are listed here: Giphy, Demo, Wolfram, and Networking, are just demo commands really to show stuff you could do. So let me just show you a couple quick commands of this. So. Are you listening? Or are you going to be really slow? Oh, you know what? I have to invite him because this is a brand new channel. Status. All right. So let me go back in here, my cheat sheet. So there's a command to say, hey, what's the status of the bot? It's been running for 3 minutes. How many commands I have loaded? How many plugins I have loaded? And I have executed 0 commands so far. Simple about one. I can say get plugin, list all the, and like I said, I call them plugins, but at the end of the day, they're PowerShell modules. That's all they are. I call them plugins because you can add a little bit of extra metadata to them to have the bot treat them differently. But you can't just, it's written in a way that you can't just import any PowerShell module should actually be able to be run from the bot, provided it doesn't accept some input like a PS credential or something like that, which you're not going to be able to supply via Slack. So I have one plugin, which is the built-in, which is always going to be there. I can get a little bit more details about that plugin, see all the available commands. These commands are the exported functions of that module. And you can see this one is also attaching a couple of permissions as well. So these commands, or at least some of them, need these permissions to be able to execute them. And I can say, my help. List all my commands. I can say help install plugin. Get a little more details about that particular command, what permission I need to run to execute it, whether or not that command is enabled or disabled. So install name it. So name it is, if you don't know, is a PowerShell module by Doug Fink to generate random strings. I know you're a big fan of this, or contribute to it, I think. Yeah. So, and I use this in testing a lot because it is just a normal PowerShell module that's not associated with PoshBot at all, and it does simple text. So it's a good candidate for testing. So I can say, well, person is running a PowerShell function, or whatever Dave does. Nice. Moonface, nice. So that's just an example of it can run really any PowerShell module that's in here. Find plugin. Find plugin is a built-in command to query the PowerShell gallery for modules that have the PoshBot tag on them. So that's just a way to easily find stuff that may have been written specifically for PoshBot. And I already have these modules out there. These are too small. If I can zoom in a bit. So let's install some. All right, so I got all those plugins installed, and I can say get plugin. I should see, I think 5 now, or 6. Now when I run help, I should see a bunch of commands from all those new plugins. And there they are. And they'll show you what plugin they came from, as long as what the actual command is. Since they're running as a job, a PowerShell job, I have access to look at the stream from that job. And if that PowerShell function is throwing errors, I can get that and show you that as an actual error within Slack. Thanks to Warren's handy dandy PS Slack module. But I'm just sending like cards back to Slack.
You're a risk taker.
What's that?
Oh, never mind. I said you're a risk taker doing Giphy on
Yeah.
PowerShell should be fun.
I did this yesterday and it didn't come back. So those are examples of just actual executing commands, and what it's doing is it's actually, the functions are called help or get plugin or install plugin. Those are the actual function names. But you could have PowerShell functions that you can tell the bot to be executed on when the string that the user entered matches some regex. And that can be helpful as well. So I can say this change, I can't type, looks good, ship it. And you can see a PowerShell function got executed. All that function does is respond back with a URL, and then Slack will unfurl it and display it. We'll do it again, probably get a different image, hopefully. Super squirrel, yeah. Or you can say, I sure would like some cookies. There it is, responding back. So that is a case of you could have the bot just running commands on, in the course of just conversation happening. Oops. Of what commands are being executed, or well, this is probably the case. I mean, everything you're going to execute in here, you're going to be logging somewhere, and then probably looking at via another tool. I do have a command, get command history, that can just show you, at least since the bot has been running, what commands have been executed and by who. And you can dictate, you can get the history of a specific one. You can see what actual string that they entered to cause that command to be executed. It does respond not just to commands you enter in chat, but also to events that Slack will emit back to clients. So I can just say DevOpsLibrary, change my topic, cause a command to be executed when that event happens. Change my purpose. You can see another function got executed. Yeah.
So the modules, these are just normal PowerShell modules. But the like the ones where you're doing the listeners, like that one just now, which is that? Where are you setting like that listener? I guess. Like,
I can show you, and that's related also. Permissions is you do the same thing. So I don't have authorization to run dig for some reason. I can't run that. So you can say help dig, and it's because dig you need to have that permission to be able to execute that command. So I can say get permission, list all the permissions available in the bot. One of them is the test network. Get role, list me all the roles, and get group, not group, get group. Will show me the groups. And how I did the permissions in PoshBot is similar to Cog in that you have a permission assigned to a command. You can roll up those permissions into a role, like a help desk role, because they could have permissions from many different plugins that come into a role. And then you create a group, which you put people into, and a role. So once you're part of a group, any command that's associated with that group, you can execute. So you kind of have this like 3-circle Venn diagram, and you need to be part of all 3 to be able to execute these things. So new role packet pusher. We're gonna authorize, since I'm an admin, I can do this, but anyone with these managed permissions or managed groups permissions could do this as well. You don't have to necessarily be an admin. I'll create a group or create a role. I will do a Add role. I'm going to add a permission to that role. And I'm going to create a new group. I'm going to add a role to that group. And I'm going to add myself to that group as well. And now, hopefully, let's just try this. Org or com? Com. There you go. Now I can run NSLOOKUP effectively. Yep.
What control permissions outside of Slack?
That is not in there yet, but like if you wanted to tie these into like an AD group or something like that.
PowerShell commands.
It is PowerShell commands. I mean, you can authorize. So what I don't have yet, and it's still in my head, but I haven't actually implemented it yet, is those commands don't have any knowledge of the context in which they were executed, like who executed that function, because that function is just being called as a job. It has no idea that it got called from a bot. So I'm trying to figure out a way to expose, hey, like some global variable or something like that with the details of who executed the command, what command that, what channel they were in. So in your command, you can put whatever logic you want to control how that command is executed. And then that's a potential way that you can do some extra authorization. But yeah, haven't actually put that. It's still right here, not on the computer yet. All right, so you can also call PoshBot by other names if you choose to. So in my case, I told the config that you can also respond to Bender as well, or Hal. And what it's doing is it's querying, I can show you the functions behind the scenes, but it's just going to these it's like randomjoke.com or something like that and pulling out the string out of the web page. So this one will fail right now. Anyone know this right now?
Yeah.
Oh, Wolfram. Yeah, so to talk to Wolfram Alpha, you need to have an API key, which you would probably not want to distribute with your plugin, especially if you want to put that on the gallery. Let's see. So I can open up my config. So as I've been doing all this, everything has been logged in JSON format right here. So this is something you could ship off to your log aggregation tool. Has all the groups, the new group I created, has all the permissions that were being set, what plugins were being loaded, and if those had permissions associated. Everything about what I just did is in here. So I can turn off the bot, bring it back up. It's going to read all these files, and none of those settings are lost. And you have your roles here, like the packet pusher role, and what permissions we added to that is all in these hash tables that it loads at startup, if they're available. Here's the actual bot config. Don't use my Slack token. I'll probably change it.
You should change it because it's not being recorded.
Yeah, it's just my personal thing. So I have this plugin configuration property, and I'm telling it when any command in the PoshBot Wolfram plugin needs a parameter called API key, use that key. I'll change that key too.
Yeah.
And this is also how you tell PoshBot to operate. Where to log, what to be known as, who are the admins, what command prefix. Maybe you don't want it to be bang. Maybe you want it to be, something else. You can call it Bender or Hal or whatever you want it to call that as well. So I'll save that. And so this is weird. It's only happened in the past couple days, but if I say Control C, Visual Studio Code closes. Does anyone know why? Does anyone know why that happens? That's started happening within the last week.
Control C and
I was in PowerShell or ComMU, hit Control C, Visual Studio Code closed. All my windows of Visual Studio Code go away. Yeah, I know. That's a feature. Yeah, let's just close everything. Let's just close the world. I figured I'd ask here because hopefully someone would look at that. Yeah, it's a new thing. But I don't know. Yes, I have to restart the bot. So that's what I was doing. What's that? No. Yeah, maybe it's a problem.
Now's my chance.
Yeah. So he should be started again. And there he is. He's been up for 6 seconds. So this should work. Does anyone know who the 34th president is? His eyes not. So that's querying Wolfram Alpha with that API key to go get that. So that's really I have for a demo of what some of the basic stuff you can do, or you can say, well, let's just actually do this. Help. I think I had something in here that did something. So this is a stub that I created that you can imagine you had a command that says create VM, and it goes and hey, creates a VM, tells you the name, gives you back the details of it. Or help, I think it was service, like that. Yeah, there's like a get role. Yeah. Let's see if Don Draper shows up. He's in here somewhere. I don't know. He's in Easter egg. Yeah, I added some help. Actually, this help. PoshBot demo. Give me all the commands of that. Yeah, new CNAME. And if you had required parameters, mandatory parameters of that function, this would come back and say, you can't run this without these parameters. Everything without a permission, anyone can execute by default. You can assign permissions to functions after the fact that didn't have them, like name it. I could secure name of functions, create a permission, attach it to a command, all of those settings would be stored in the PoshBot configuration folder. So next time you load, it would load up those modules and apply those permissions on top as well. All right, so if you, and like you were talking about, how do we assign permissions, or how do you tell a command to be executed with regex? Let's look at the demo, the ship it function.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
See that? Okay. So this is done via a custom attribute called PoshBot bot command that extends from the attribute class. And I'm just using it to attach some metadata. So when I import your module, I'm looking for, do you have that attribute? Yes? Okay, well, I'm going to treat that command a little bit differently. And if you don't, I'm just going to execute it normally. So this is saying the ship it command, I should not be able to do this. Because it's not a, okay, maybe it is command. Never mind. Bug. But this is saying run the regex ship it against every command, every message that comes in from Slack. And if you find one that matches that, execute the command. And this command is really just picking a random URL and responding back with it.
You discussed if you want a command that includes the regex with the default. So if you did like medium, ship it, would it take back to something?
Oh, let's see, I don't know. I said create VM ship it. You gonna try to break it for me?
I doubt you could do this, but could you pipe one to another in the same line?
No, I don't have pipeline support. That's, yeah. Cog has the notion to be able to pipe commands between each other, but I haven't looked at how you would actually do that.
I just want to be able to insult it.
And you to like hold the results of the last job and make that available.
Yeah, and then be able to
run, and then make that an argument into the next
yeah.
job. To reference that.
So here's so that's how you with this custom attribute, that's how you can tell PoshBot to treat the command a little differently. By adding this, you're putting a dependency on the PoshBot module. You have to do that because that class is only available in that module. For permissions, I think I have it in here. So invoke ping, yeah. So similar thing. I'm saying you need to have the test network permission to run this command. And you define all the permissions associated with a plugin by adding them to the private data of the module. You can add them right here. I believe I have that. So you can actually dig into built-in, which is internal to PoshBot, is here. So I have all these permissions attached to the manifest. And then if you actually look at how the help function works, it is just a PowerShell function, with the caveat being it is actually past the bot class instance, so it can actually look in it and do everything. But all these commands, like get role, you need the view role permission to do that. So that is PoshBot in a nutshell, and kind of ChatOps. At least my take on ChatOps in general. So that's all I got. That's where you can find me. T. Hanks. As a side, these are some of the other projects. These are all on PowerShell Gallery as well, and under my GitHub account. There are other interesting projects I've been doing, which I'm not going to go into now. But if you want to know about them, you can ask me. There you go.
Lunch is set out in the back, but before everybody jumps up and goes and grabs food,